Welcome back to Nick Lenz's Comic Corner Classic Class Known Classics. This is episode number 1517. No, 1517. 23, excuse me. And 1417. Now I got two Batman related stuff here. First up, we're discussing Batman Cataclysm. Yep, the trade paperback that collects the entire crossover. And can you believe it's been 23 years since the storyline came out? Now, you might be asking, Nick, did you read the storyline when it originally came out? No, I didn't. I never did. Because, well, there's actually a really good reason why I didn't read when it came out. I was reading comics at that point. I was only about 10 when this thing first started. And I didn't get a chance to read DC Comics until 2010. So, in the last decade, I've been reading stuff like this. So, Cataclysm was the event that pretty much sparked off a series of storylines for the Batman comics for the next 2 years. Yep, it's a storyline where Gotham City suffers an earthquake. First, and this is actually the first major time that the city itself is actually affected by a particular story arc in this manner. And to my knowledge, the next time something like this would happen again until the events of War Games. Yeah, where it gets this bad. The War Games was a crime-driven story, but something of an epic scale, let's say, Cataclysm. I say the closest we got was probably 0 Year. Of course, that came out like 8 years ago. Now, what issues of which books cover this particular event? Well, we have Detective Comics 719 and 721, Batman 553 and 554, Batman Shadow of the Bat 7374, Nightwing issues 19 and 20, Azrael number 40, Robin 5253, Catwoman 5657, Batman Chronicles issue 12, Batman Black Isle of Men, Batman Huntress Spoiler Blunt Trauma, and Batman Arkham Asylum Trail of Madness. Now, who does these issues? Well, the Shadow of the Bat issues are done by Alan Grant. Nightwing, Robin, and Detective Comics are all done by Chuck Dixon. And who does some of the other ones? Well, Batman, I believe, is done by Doug Moak. Yep, Doug Moak. Of course, Daniel O'Neill does Azrael, obviously. Unlike in the case of No Man's Land, where it has like a bunch of writers keep swapping books every issue, this one you have a pretty good idea who actually writes the books. Now, what about, let's say, Batman Chronicles? There's actually about 3 different writers this one. There's actually got 5 stories in Batman Chronicles 12. The contract is written by Devin Grayson. The second story, House of Cards, is written and drawn by with Bob McLean as the inker. Yes, Bob McLean is the inker. Trapped by Chris Renner with Alex Lee with the artwork. Yeah, Rick Barnett who does the writing and artwork, and I'm not sure why they credit it basically as a writer and penciler, even if they could say both. You have Claus Johnson, Love Me 2 Times, and Kelly Pudick who does Love, Orphan Annie. Of course, Batman is done by Doug Moak. He was the writer at that point. He stopped writing long after this. Now, Hunter says, spoiler, Blunt Trauma, that's done by Chuck Dixon. Arkham Asylum Trail of Madness, that is done by Alan Grant. Now, I do have a slight problem with this trade. Yes, and this is one of the 2 times I've seen this for a trade paperback that collects an issue that ties into a particular story arc. Or at least in the case of a crossover. Robin 52. I mistakenly said 55 when I eventually discussed Batman No Man's Land. Okay, now. Oh, by the way, Catwoman's done by Devin Grayson. I forgot to mention it. This issue, this Batfigures issue, is normally about 23 pages. Guess how many pages of this particular issue is collecting this trade paperback? 5 pages. I'm like, seriously, this is so freaking stupid. Like, I'm not sure why the heck do you see this for. Why? Because this is the only pages of the issue that dealt with Cataclysm? Yeah, in the case of Robin, he was out of town when this happened. Now, where was everybody doing when the earthquake was happening? Batman was in the Batcave. And he actually saw the earthquake firsthand in the Batcave. The cave was splitting up. Heck, we even saw the giant penny. Yes, the object he took from the penny plunderer. I'm not kidding about that. Yeah, it's a common thing seeing the Batcave. And a lot of the Batman stuff is wrecked. Though it gets fixed later on. Yep. And that topples over. And of course, Alfred is in Wayne Manor just doing dishes. And of course, the house gets wrecked. Now, Nightwing is also out of town, but he's in Bloodhaven. Okay. Azrael is nearby, but he's not technically in town at this point in time. Nope. Now, what's Jim Gordon up to? He was actually in his office when the earthquake happened. Barbara Gordon was in the clock tower. And all this basically, this earthquake happening. I at least appreciate that all the writers of this particular event. By the way, we have one female writer this whole event, Devin Grayson, who writes Catwoman. And the artwork for these issues are done by fantastic artists. Like, oh my gosh. The artists for these issues basically are done by the late Jim Perro, Jim Bounty Office, that's Catwoman at this point, Eduardo Barrito, Mark Buckingham, Rick Burnett, Claus Johnson, Staz Johnson, Alex Maleev, Scott McDaniel, Graham Nolan, Kelly Pudick, and Chris Renner. The cover art of the trade is done by Brian Surfleece, who was actually the cover artist for Batman Shadow of the Bat for pretty much almost the entire run of Alan Grant when he was basically the writer of the book. Yep, I met Brian Surfleece. Awesome to meet in person. Now, throughout this event, everybody is dealing with basically what they're up to during the event, and of course, people are trying to deal with this whole thing. Catwoman, believe it or not, was basically just relaxing her apartment. Like, ooh, time to look up pretty Gotham. And look like, oh crap, Gotham city's in ruins. Yeah, she seriously is looking at binoculars at this particular thing. Yep, it is by far one of the most hilarious, it's one of the most weirdest things happening here. And the cops basically are panicking at this because they've never had anything like this. Like Barbara Gordon has a cool head by having an officer take an officer's gun, though she does not get arrested for this because he knows that he's doing shoots for a very good reason. She takes the gun, fires the gun off in the air, introduces herself as Barbara Gordon, the daughter of Commissioner Jim Gordon, and the stepdaughter of Lieutenant Sarah Essen Gordon. Tells them all, calm down. They only got loved ones, basically to handle. But we need to basically handle this at calm situation, and we need to basically activate generators, all this other stuff. And I love the fact that she's written that way. That's actually very brilliant writing right there. I don't remember who actually wrote that, but good job. And maybe Chuck Dixon wrote that. But this particular event is handled really, really well. Yeah, despite the fact this whole event took place in the period of about a year, like, all the issues were released in the period of, like, just a period of just a few months. Like, it is just so well done, and just a really good story. Yes. And, of course, this will later lead into a series of stories known as the Road to No Man's Land, which, for a long time, was never collected in trade. And, of course, they were collected in trade about 6 years ago. This particular crossover event has been collected in trade a couple times over the years. This actually is the second printing of the trade. And this is more of a complete edition of this particular storyline. I think originally this may have been collected in 2 volumes, but I think DC must have realized, though, garbage already out, Dad. Anyways, this book is just really good. I do recommend it if you're a Batman fan. And if you're going to get into reading stuff like No Man's Land, by the way, Bane is in here. Oh yeah, by the way, Azrael captured Bane. Yes, he captured Bane at the start of this event. And the earthquake is happening, he gets away, and of course the GCPD officer says, we'll handle this, you got the Bane, and Azrael's like, that's actually a really good idea. Yeah, let the vigilante go after Bane, while they basically help their comrades. That actually is kind of a good idea. I kind of wish he would stay behind. Now you might be curious though, like, is there any, like, instance of basically, like, is Cassandra Cain in this storyline? No, she makes debut No Man's Land. And despite the fact everything is handled here really well, basically in the stuff for Road to No Man's Land, it's written to be basically where the politicians in DC in the Road to No Man's Land stuff that comes right after this storyline wraps up. Basically, this particular crossover was written to be very unlikable, that they won't agree to send any actual aid to Gotham City. Nope, basically declare it no man's land and basically deem not part of the United States anymore. Like big idiots. It's a good thing someone big as Lex. Like apparently Bruce Wayne is not big enough to save Gotham City, despite the fact he would actually help pay for rebuilding the city. DC's like, nope, we're not doing that. We're basically, it's like, we're going to write it off. And that came to bite him in the butt a year later when Lex Luthor showed up and deemed the whole no man's land thing a piece of nonsense. But yeah, great story arc. I do recommend it. I give this a 10 out of 10. It's excellent. Well done. And just thoroughly, much more organized. No Man's Land felt, reading it felt like it was a bit like all over the place. Yeah, that's what it seemed like to me. That's just my opinion anyways. Alright, moving on. I'm going to discuss basically Detective Comics 746 to 758 and 763 to 777. Now, am I going to talk about all the issues, like the whole thing? No, I'm going to discuss only the backup feature. Now, you're probably wondering, why am I doing this? Why am I discussing only the backup feature? Excuse me, because I feel like it. That's simply the reason for it. And here's a fun fact for you. Now, 746 is the start of the era backup features for Detective Comics that will continue on up until just after War Games. Yeah, once the War Crimes storyline happens, like that's when they stop the backup features. This lasts for several years. Started in 2000. I think it wrapped up around 2004. Yeah, it lasted for a few years, and then they brought it back briefly in like 2009 for like a year, a little over a year, and then they dropped the feature. And in case you're curious, did they bring the whole thing, bring a backup feature back to the comics? Yes, it was brought back occasionally during like John Layman's run. Tony S. Daniel didn't have a backup feature. John Layman occasionally has backup features. Mostly it was a Man-Bat backup feature, which they actually did bother to collect that stuff. This era, nope, we don't bother to collect it. Mostly putting out 746 to 757 and 763 to 762. Well, 72 anyways. Actually 765. That's actually part of the new Gotham story arc, which also included Officer Down. That's to discuss that. Now, from issues 746 to 757. This is the 12-part The Jacobin backup feature. Interesting title. Now, this is by Jordan Garfunkel. This is a 12-parter that's got really good artwork. I love the artwork for this particular backup feature, which is done by some... Let's see if I can find the name here. It is done by Jeff Johnson. It's a really good set of artwork. The story arc is the whole feature, this whole series itself, The Jacobin. Here's some artwork by this artist. It's not very good. Yeah, it's not very good. Nothing against the writer. It felt as though this particular thing, like the artwork is the best thing about this feature. The writing is not very good. Now, I am very familiar with this particular writer due to the fact he wrote Catwoman. I believe he was the final writer for Catwoman. Yes, let me take a look at that just to be sure. No, I'm still making it.
I'll take your garbage.
It's already out.
Where is it?
I took out the trash can.
Okay, I got it then. Alright, it's already in.
Okay. Yeah, this guy was the last writer for Catwoman. I like the Catwoman stuff he wrote. This story is just not very good. It felt like every time he finished the story up, like the story felt way too quick, and like it had a good start to it. I liked the start, and then it became like, oh, let's let the character basically lose his name for no reason. Let's call him by a different name, and have his girlfriend Lily. That's her name. Where first they say girlfriend, and it's like, nope, not my girlfriend. She's married. And then later on, oh yeah, she's married to him. And then they revealed Lily is actually Lilith, as in one of the women who was proposed to by Adam from the Adam and Eve story. And it becomes like an Adam and Eve stuff. Yeah, this story is not very good. Like, wow, this story is terrible. Like, no wonder why DC has never bothered to collect this particular feature, because it is freaking bad. It is that bad. Now, what about 76058? This is an excellent short story done by Brett Brubaker. Yep, this is simply put Michael Atkin's first day at the commissioner because Jim Gordon retired in the Officer Down story. And it's just really good. I thoroughly enjoy it. Now, you're probably asking, okay, what about 759 and 662? I've technically covered these issues already, both the backup feature for this one. Well, in the original Catwoman trade. Yes, I have. People are thinking, when did I cover that? You might ask. Well, let me look it up on here. I know I've covered it, because I did review it at some point. Let's see. I know it was a long time ago. I think it wasn't that one. I know it was a long time ago I covered this. Let's see if I can find it here. Oh, I thought I did. I guess I didn't. Simply put, that particular feature is just basically the backdoor pilot to the Catwoman series. That's the simple gist of it. Yep. Now, what about, let's say, 763 to 772? This 10-part backup feature is a lot better story arc. I love this one. This is basically a Josie Mack feature. Now, you probably say, Nick, didn't you say 74 was the first appearance? Okay, I misread that. That was not her first appearance. Her first appearance was actually in 763. Yes, of course, the creative team of the book is the same one who does this feature. It's mostly a case of hers, or she basically it's a missing persons case, where she basically is also having Batman in the feature. By the way, the Jacobin, like, one of the ways it's really bad is the fact it doesn't feature any DC character making a cameo appearance. Like, nobody. Like, oh yeah, let's have a story where you have run into desert ninjas for an issue. Like, what? Seriously. It felt like the person who edited this thing really had no idea what they were doing. At least the Greg Rucka stuff was actually really good. Not the Jacobin. Nope, this was freaking bad. Josie Mack was much better. The pacing was really good. Good thing it was written by an excellent writer, by the former Judd Winnick. Yes. Now the against Jordan Gorfago. Nothing against the guy. I think he's a good writer. It just that his feature is not very good. Of course, that's my opinion. But in the case of Josie Mack, this is an excellent feature. And let me check and see. I don't think it's collected. Let me take a look at that, if I can move the damn mouse properly. No, it isn't. They didn't bother to collect the feature. No, they didn't even collect 784. Nope, not really. Yeah, but this is a very good backup feature. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Now, what about 773 to 775? Okay, This is known as The Hunted. It is done by... If I can find to get the damn thing here. Okay, this only lasts for 3 issues. This is done by... Well... If I get the right thing here. This is done by John Francis Moore. Yes, John Francis Moore. Like, okay, that's a good writer. Mm-hmm. Yes. John Francis Moore. Yep, he is basically... Now, this features a serial killer, this one. Yep. Now, this guy also wrote the series Chronicles. Yeah, short-lived series. He was also the last writer for Catwoman just prior to the thing ending. He's wrote issues here and there. He was one of the writers for X-Force, the original volume. He wrote stuff sporadically, like over the course from 1983 to 2003. Yeah, not a lot of stuff. I would say the only books he basically stand for compared to time was Catwoman, Chronicles, and Superboy. Everything else was like 1 or 2 issues. He's only in this book just for 3 issues, and that's it. He also co-wrote the Birds of Prey one-shots that came just before the start of the Birds of Prey ongoing series. Now, this character, who is known as the Tracker, he appears in this 3-part story arc, and then he later returns in the first issue of Batman Family, where they kill him off. And if you're curious, though, what the heck the guy looks like, well, this is what he looks like. Yeah, this person who existed just for these 3 issues. Yep, and after that, that's simply it. Nothing else to this particular feature. It's just basically a serial killer for a few issues, and he gets killed off. It's just something that's barely matched thing. I would say the 3 features, the Josie Mac one's really good. Jacobin is terrible. In the case of The Hunt, it's an interesting story arc. I say it's the second best one of these features. Yep. But the standalone one done by Ed Brubaker, that was really, really good. I thoroughly enjoyed that. And if you want to know, that's about 758. Yes. For some reason, that was not put into trade for some reason. I don't really know why. It's kind of weird. Yep. Oh, by the way, here's the funny thing about the Josie Mac story. They published at the same time as Batman Bruce Wayne Murderer / Bruce Wayne Fugitive. They published that storyline at the same time. Why the heck they did it for? No idea. It's particularly quite odd and quite strange for continuity purposes. You could say the feature took place before Bruce Wayne was arrested for murder. It's possible, but who the heck knows? Okay, so that's it for particular review. Stay tuned for my review for One Piece, which, yes, I'm going to do that next. Okay, next video. Bye.